concealing. But our duty today is to our country and our children and our Constitution. We are obligated to seek answers directly from the man who set this all in motion. And every American is entitled to those answers, so we can act now to protect our republic. So this afternoon, I am offering this resolution that the committee direct the chairman to issue a subpoena for relevant documents and testimony under oath from Donald John Trump in connection with the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. If there's no further debate, the question is on agreeing to the resolution. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed is no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I request a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Cheney.
Aye.
Ms. Cheney, aye. Ms. Lofgren.
Aye.
Ms. Lofgren, aye. Mr. Schiff.
Aye.
Mr. Schiff, aye. Mr. Aguilar.
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar, aye. Mrs. Murphy.
Aye.
Mrs. Murphy, aye. Mr. Raskin.
Aye.
Mr. Raskin, aye. Mrs. Luria.
Aye.
Mrs. Luria, aye. Mr. Kinzinger.
Kinzinger, aye.
Mr. Kinzinger, aye. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
The clerk will report the vote.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, there are 9 ayes and 0 noes.
The resolution is agreed to.
And that's how Thursday's House January 6 hearing ended. The video aired of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi recorded on January 6 was filmed by her daughter, the documentary filmmaker Alexandra Pelosi. It had never been publicly seen before yesterday. After the hearing, CNN aired additional footage shot by Alexandra of the House Speaker reacting to Donald Trump's speech at the Ellipse on January 6th.
And that's what this is all about.
Secret Service said they have dissuaded him from coming to Capitol Hill. They told him they don't have the resources to protect him here. So at the moment, he is not coming, but that could change.
Oh, he comes, I'm gonna punch him out. This is my
I
mom.
would pay the fee.
I've been waiting for this, for trespassing on the Capitol grounds. I'm gonna punch him out, I'm gonna go to jail, and I'm gonna be happy.
And that does it for our show. A happy belated birthday to Miguel Noguera and a happy early birthday to Juan Gonzalez. And today is my precious pup's Zazu's 2nd birthday. A very happy birthday to Zazu and her beloved twin brother, Kasha. Democracy Now! Is currently accepting applications for a video news production fellowship, an associate digital editor, and a people and culture manager. Learn more and apply at democracynow.org. Democracy Now! Produced with Renee Phelps, Mike Burke, Dina Gesder, Messiah Rhodes, Nermeen Sheikh, Maria Tarasena, Tammy Warren, Tarina Nadura, Sam Alcoff, Tamer Astudio, John Hamilton, Rabbi Karen Honey, Masood, Mary Conlon, our executive director, Julie Crosby. Special thanks to Julie Staley, to Becca Staley. I'm Amy Goodman.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of 91.3 FM WBNY, the United Students Government at Buffalo State, or Buffalo State itself. Due to the opinionated nature of these programs, listener discretion is highly advised. If you have any questions or comments about today's program, you can give us a call at 716-878-5104.
To join Mr. Hare on today's Living for the People, dial 878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY. Courtesy.
All right, welcome to Living for the People. This is El Nathan here. Welcome to our new broadcast, focused on providing you insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for the day and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following the Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, our program is live. So you can call in and join our discussion. Hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. And of course, you know that I have my admittance card into the 21st century. So they've allowed me in, but they didn't give me any training. So, so to utilize all of the technology that's available to us, we have Willie H., who does the live streaming of our program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. I want to welcome all our radio viewers, our Facebook viewers, our YouTube viewers, our LinkedIn viewers, and our Twitter viewers. Welcome.
As you see, we have a lot of technology that's available to us now. If you're listening or watching live, you can type in, if you don't want to call, you can type in your questions, your concerns, or your observations, and we'll respond to as many as we can while we're on the air. I want to give a shout out to our producer, James Braun. Hope everything is working well. We'll look forward to talking to you all on Monday. And so let me just tell you a little bit about what's going on. Before I get to that, though, I got to put a commercial in.
Go ahead.
Okay, we had some really bad stuff happen with this Hurricane Ian.
Right.
You know, every time these things happen, massive amounts of dollars and human resources have to be mounted to try to deal with these crises.
Right.
Well, this was a big one. And so we're introducing the broadcast today by placing out a call to all of us to provide whatever help we can for our fellow citizens in Florida and in the Carolinas that were so massively hit by this hurricane. One place where you can offer your support is by contacting the support coalition that is organized around the Red Cross and other self-help organizations online. You go to ianresponse.org. That's IANRESPONSE.org, ianresponse.org. Let's work together to help Florida and the Florida communities get back together by volunteering your time and or sending in your resources, your money, because money's gonna, at the end of the day, you're gonna need money on the table to be able to get this thing, you know, back to somewhere near normalcy. So again, you can contact the ianresponse.org. That's IANRESPONSE.org. I wanted to take today's program. We're going to talk about a couple of things. The first one is something you probably wouldn't expect me to be talking about: military readiness, right? You would think that a progressive wouldn't be talking a whole lot about military readiness. But the reality is, if you are not ready and the thing that you have a military for shows up, you can't tell whoever shows up to contend with you. You can't say, excuse me, I'm not ready for this war yet. I'll see you, you know, in a few months when I power up. That doesn't work like that. You know, you got to be ready at the time.
Right.
So I came across an article that was written actually with regard to the Canadian readiness, but it made me conscious and present with the reality that we have a need to be ready as a nation as well. This was an article written by Jesse Klein. It was called "Armed Forces Admit There's No One Left to Use Its Rusted Out Gear." This was written in the National Post in Canada in October 11th of this year. And it says, I said this, if anyone hadn't noticed, our Canadian military is in crisis. For years, we've heard stories about how Ottawa's chronic neglect, Ottawa is the capital of Canada, about Ottawa's chronic neglect of the Canadian Armed Forces has left it with outdated hardware, sidearms that belong in a history museum. This is what Canadian soldiers are walking around with right now. Cold War era jet fighters, the same jet fighters they had in 1942 are the same ones they have right now. Now, I'm pretty sure that was 80 years ago. We're still using the same planes today that we were using 80 years ago. Not the same design of the planes. We're using the same planes that were being flown 80 years ago in Canada. And we need to talk about our situation in the United States. They were using, according to this article, what he referred to as secondhand subs. uh, their submarines were also built in the World War II era. They're still using the same subs, not the same design of a sub. They're using the exactly same subs that they were using then. These subs are 80 years old. So it says even the most unscrupulous, a used car salesperson wouldn't try to sell the stuff that the Canadians are using as their military hardware right now. I mean, it's just bizarre that this would actually be going on. You had a thought on that?
Well, Canadian, like, let's say if we go to war, would they side with us or they be?
Canada almost always sides with the United States.
That's what I thought.
Right? So when the United States goes into a conflict, you can almost be certain that Canada will send, I mean, a much smaller number, but they will send a number of troops to support the American forces.
Because we're so close to them.
I mean, to be honest with you, you live in New York State.
Right.
When you cross over into Windsor or you cross over into Ontario, do you even know that you're in Canada? You
No.
feel like you're
Right.
still in the United States.
Absolutely right.
And when the Southern Canadians, not the ones in Quebec, because they have that French, culture. Most of them speak French in their normal course of the day. So you always know when you're in Quebec. But when you're in Ontario, the province of Ontario, or if you're in Saskatchewan, if you're in Alberta, you barely know that you're in Canada because they speak like you, they dress like you, they
Right.
talk like
That's
you,
correct.
they do everything like you do, and you do everything like they do.
Yes.
So it's almost like a symbiotic relationship that the United States has with Canada. So the other issue that this Jesse Klein was reporting, the observation he was making was even if the Canadians had updated all of their equipment and had state-of-the-art planes and rifles and guns and munitions and so on, even if they had all of that, his point is there's no one there to use it. They don't have enough soldiers to be able to mount the campaigns they would have to mount to support the things they're actually involved in right now, or that they could be involved in. So now that I got your attention, I want to ask the question, how ready is the United States?
How ready do you think we are? Well, we got a lot of guns.
We got a lot of guns.
U.S.
Well, we got a lot of guns in private hands. How many guns does the military have? I mean, think about this, right? The military has roughly 2.1, 2.2 or so million people in the standing army of the United States. But of that, maybe 400,000, 300,000 are fighting forces. A lot of your army are people that are technicians, they're clerical people, they're people that maintain, equipment, and that sort of stuff. They're not the actual go to bat, soldiers that you saw out there in Iraq, in Somalia and so on.
Right.
So the question becomes, do we have enough soldiers to be able to do the things that we are asking our country to do, or that at least our elected leaders are setting policy that requires us to do? So Canada's active troop strength has steadily been declining since the end of World War II, dropping from 88,000 in 1989 to 72,000 in 2019. And in the last report I saw said that they had something a little bit less than 64,000 troops. You got a caller hanging on?
No, not a caller, but I got some Facebook viewers. This is why Americans shouldn't be allowed to have guns, cars, or children. What else?
Guns or children?
Yeah, they're joking. And then, hold on. And also, leave it to the worst people to make America great. Wow.
But we speak obviously in satirical and comical terms about these things, only because the things are so serious that you could become overwhelmed with the seriousness of the situation.
Right.
Ask yourself this question: what happens if we have to go into a ground offensive or defense with Russia? Russia borders Canada. It borders the Canadian Yukon territories. What happens if we have to go to war over these folks?
Right.
The Russians have something in the area of 400, maybe 500,000 people in their standing army. I'm talking about the fighting forces, not all of the support people. So what happens if we have to confront that kind of an army? We may be talking about the United States having, 400,000 or 500,000 troops in play. We barely have 400,000 or 500,000 troops right now, and we're spread out in Philippines, we're in Somalia, we're in Yemen, we're in Kosovo, in the former Yugoslavia, right? I mean, we're in a lot of places, right? So what happens? And then what happens if the other unimaginable thing occurs? That the Chinese, who've been saying they've been kicking it for a long time. We need to be the big dog now.
Right.
Why should we be the big dog?
Right.
Because we got 1.5 billion people.
Right.
You only got 330
Correct.
million people. So since we're 5 times bigger than you, we should be 5 times larger than you. I mean, I'm not saying they think like that way up as petty as
not only that, I'm just thinking too, Mr. Here. Even there's a bunch of Chinese in this country, and they doing very well, and they got family there. So if they needed to infiltrate, they could easily do it.
I would hope that you would not say that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah,
we already went down that road.
Right,
where they went and locked up all of the Chinese people and whatnot. Right? They had the I forget the name of the act now. It won't come to my head. It'll come to my head.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I apologize, guys. You're right. I shouldn't have been thinking like that.
We don't want to go down that road.
Right.
I'm
sorry. Please forgive me.
But the road that you need to be on is the one where you understand where your competition may be coming from. That's one side.
Right.
But the other side is where might you have to fight a great power war? Fighting a war, with Afghanistan that has, whatever it is, 18 million people, most of whom are farmers, and so on, who barely know where the United States is, if they know where the United States is at all. Fighting a war there is a different prospect than having to fight a war against China.
Right.
China can probably put 5 or 6 million people in play.
So when you think about it, China is the biggest threat, even probably more than Russia, if they wanted to be hostile.
If they wanted to be. Now, China is not, just so we're clear.
They're friendly.
China has not, no, they're not friendly.
Oh, they're not friendly?
No. Just because somebody isn't spitting at you doesn't mean that they're your friend. Okay.
Or smile at you.
They can still not be your friend, even though they're not doing anything horrible to you right now.
Right.
So China, it's not that they're a friend or not a friend.
Right.
China is just a friend of China.
Right.
So China is pursuing its own destiny.
Right.
It's trying to become the big dog economically because that gives them control over the circumstances, the conditions in which international trade takes place.
Right. And even if they're not, they're set up. They are going in that direction.
Exactly. And then from a military perspective, everybody wants to be the big dog militarily because that means you're the person who's least likely to be attacked. And you want to be the least likely to be attacked. You don't want to be the most likely to be attacked.
Right.
So that's the situation that we're in. The question is, are we ready? Is the United States prepared to be able to sustain an engagement if we're called upon?
Right.
Are we able to do something other than lob missiles from 500 miles away, which is the over the horizon stuff that President Biden was talking about?
And that's the last resort for everybody.
I mean, that over the horizon stuff, it's cute. I guess you have cameras on the bombs and whatnot, and you can say, yeah, we blew up this rock that was floating around another rock, Didymos or something out there 7 million miles away from Earth. Those things are cute.
Right.
But you can't control territory with missiles that you send over the horizon. You control territory with people. You have to put people on the ground.
Right.
And so the United States really is not in a position to fight massive people wars right now. And that's something that we need to address. The Canadians don't even have enough experienced officers to train their new recruits.
Wow.
I'm concerned, do we have enough officers to train our current recruits? If I'm not mistaken, we have a new recruitment goal for our Army and Marines of 100,000 new recruits every year.
Every year we recruited.
But this
100,000.
last year, we've been short by 10 to 20,000.
Because of COVID. Because probably COVID.
Well, we say because of COVID,
right.
but I think it's also because you have a lot of Americans who are, not only are they too young to remember World War II,
Right.
their grandparents are too young to really remember World War II. Remember, World War II was 80 years ago. So if you're 20 years old now,
Right.
you could have parents who are 40 years old. You have grandparents who are 60 years old.
That's correct.
So it's easy to see that you could have grandparents of the kids, the 20-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 21-year-olds today,
Right.
grandparents who weren't even born when, World War II was underway. Now, why is that important? The United States put, if I'm not mistaken, something in the area of 3 to 4 million people on the street. On the line to fight World War II.
3 million people.
And maybe more.
Right.
I may be misremembering that. It may be significantly more than that.
3 million.
That we put in play just in that theater, right? In the European theater. So what happens if the reason why you were able to do that is because you had a spirit of patriotism in this country.
Correct.
People felt that the United States interests, especially when Pearl Harbor got attacked, right? And I'm not even into the Roosevelt conspiracy thing. Did he know about the attack before? That's another issue altogether. The issue in terms of what the American public understood was that the United States itself, even though we are separated by the Pacific Ocean on one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other side, we were still being attacked with a humongously destructive attack on Pearl Harbor.
Right.
As a consequence, you had a spirit of patriotism drew all kinds of people to come to the war. We probably had 150, 200,000 African people that jumped into the war game immediately, following the attack on Pearl Harbor. So this was a patriotism spirit that crossed every ethnic group across the United States. But today, do you have that same spirit of patriotism? If you called on people today, to muscle up, to put people in play as infantrymen, as Marines,
right?
Would you have a huge outpouring?
I don't think so.
See, because we don't have that spirit of patriotism that
right.
we had before.
Right.
Now we got people saying, "Oh, you're a migrant. Oh, you're not really an American. You're a other. You're not like us. The sons and daughters of the Plymouth Rock, and so on. You're not like us."
And that's probably at least almost 50% of the country now.
Easily.
Easily.
And in our schools, it's 52% of the kids that are in our schools are not sons and daughters of the Plymouth Rock, revolution. So why is that important? It means that you don't have that tactile, visceral, just gut, outpouring spirit to defend the interests of the United States. You don't have that right now. You may have mercenary type people who say, well, they're giving $20,000 for somebody to sign up, for the Marines. So if you're coming in for that reason, as opposed to coming in because you want to serve your country, to be a part of the backbone of the defense of your country, you get a different spirit. Right. And when you get a mercenary spirit, you also get some mercenary behavior. Right. We saw in what happened in Iraq, when we had the is it Devoy? I'm missaying that person's name. The guy who was the founder of the Blackwater organization that the Trump administration contracted with, to fight the war in Afghanistan and in Iraq. He actually contracted with a private mercenary army, to do the things that our army was supposed to be doing.
That was in Afghanistan.
Wow. And we're not only doing the things that our army, should be doing. We should not be hiring people at 3 times the cost to do something that we could do with our own armed forces.
Right.
But did we have the armed forces to put in play to do the work that we had assigned ourselves to do. Didn't have that, right? Now, what happens with those mercenaries? They're raping people, they're robbing people. Because they're
They don't care.
mercenaries.
Right,
They're
they're
mercenaries, right?
They do whatever.
See, now, I'm not saying that every mercenary is that kind of a person. I am saying that if your spirit that brought you to sign up in the armed forces was the fact that they offered you $10,000 or $20,000 as a signing bonus, right? And that's what drew you in. That kind of person, that kind of motivation tends to be the kind of person with that kind of motivation that does other things that are crass.
That's correct.
Does things that, you know, are not what we would hope would be the behavior of somebody in the United States.
That's partly why war is like hell, because you got other people. You might have honorable, moral people in there, but then you're going to have other that will do anything.
I'm a resistor of, I hear what you're saying, but I'm a resistor against that thought. My thought is that under duress, you're only going to do what is within the framework of your value system.
Right. That's what
if you're under duress, you're not going to go rape somebody because you're under duress.
Right.
You're not going to go steal stuff off of somebody's table because you're under duress.
That's correct.
Right. So if you do that kind of stuff, it's because that's who you really are.
Correct.
You're just being the stress you're under is just revealing you for being who you actually are. Right. But we have to change, in my view, as a country. We have to change our matrix. Not that anybody would hire me to do this, but because and I would not run for office because I'm just not into kissing babies and all of that frilly stuff that people do. That's
no
not
signatures.
That's not me.
No
right?
handshaking.
I mean, I might shake your hand, just one, you know, but I'm just not. I see what Joe Biden does. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
It would get on my nerves. Right?
He's that type of person. He's just a lovey-dovey, touchy-feely type of person.
But if it were me, I would ask you to hire me. Number one, let's work out a contract, you know, so we know that what we're doing. And then I would have us do something different. I would have us require every American who finishes high school, whatever age you are when you finish high school, that you have to do 2 years of service, either 2 years in the active military, right, or 2 years in an active civilian corps, a civilian service corps. So a military, you do what soldiers do right now. Some of you are going to be radio technicians, some are going to be fighting on front lines.
You're
going to be all of that.
Okay.
If you're a civilian corps, now you're digging ditches, you're helping people to de-shrub, you know, these lands underneath the forest, you know, around the country. You're teaching kids in preschool.
I like that.
Right.
Actually,
you know, in other words, so the idea would be that everybody would go through a boot camp.
Right. 6
to 8 weeks. I know they only do 6 weeks now, but I'd make it 8 weeks because I don't trust us to learn enough in 6 weeks. I don't think 2 months is a lot of time either, right?
Right.
But what the boot camp does is it changes people from being the disparate people that they are. Everybody's different. This one's Polish, this one's German, this one's an aristocrat, you know, this one's a basketball player, you know, all disparate people. But when you come into boot camp, that drill sergeant is saying, here's who you are going to be.
Right.
This is what makes you us, this is what makes you a Marine. This is what makes you a GI. This is what makes you a whatever an Air Force person is, you know, and so on. They help you define what it is you are turning yourself into. They're not trying to help you become you.
Right.
They're trying to help you to become them.
Right.
Right. So everybody is all being focused on becoming the same thing. Same understanding of what country you live in.
Right.
Same understanding of what constitution you live under.
Right.
Same understanding about what your rights are. Same understanding about your national interest.
That makes sense to me because even after I finished high school, my first next step was military. I went. I didn't pass because I had asthma. That's the reason I didn't go in. But that was
you should have breathed harder.
Logically, to me, in my mind, was go military, then you be set up for college and everything else, and you get some training, you get work. So that was.
Right. You do that 2 years and you get, you know, 2 to 4 years, I would say 4 years of undergraduate education,
Right.
you get paid for by the government
Right.
because you did that 2 years of service
That makes sense
to
me.
your country, right? And it turns everybody into a same kind of an American.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can't change your origins, right?
Right.
If I'm an African, you're a Puerto Rican, you're Venezuelan,
Right.
you're French, you know, you can't change that. That's who you came from.
Right.
And you don't want to change
They
it.
don't want to change.
Why would you want to change it?
But
right?
it'll create patriotism and that we're
right,
one.
Right. So you want to be all of those different sources,
Right.
but you want to meld them together to become a particular thing. Now that particular thing can still celebrate its sources,
Right.
but the particular thing that you are is a American citizen,
Mm-hmm.
an American citizen who believes on America, that has a common understanding of what democracy is, of
Right.
what our Constitution is, of what our commitments are, what our passions are, you know, as a nation of people, and then have the ability to fight for each other. All those guys that are in a boot camp, that are in the same regiment or whatever they call it,
Mm-hmm.
they all end up with a passion for each other. You ever hear these guys that have served talk? My father talks about the dudes that he went to war with all the time,
Right.
right? Now, my father left the service in 1944.
And he's still talking about
Still
it.
talks about it.
Yeah.
Well, when he was alive, he died 6 years ago.
Right.
But he talked about them all. I mean, I know the guys that he served with,
Right.
and most of them I never met.
Right.
But because he talked about them so much, because they were molded together into
Right.
becoming
He developed
a
a
group.
kinship.
right, exactly.
And it was probably all types of people too.
Right, and that's what that drill sergeant. I know it could be a person that gets on your nerves, talking all loud and calling people names, you know, things like that. But the outcome tended to be that people got molded into being a common thing. So you could still be whoever you were, whoever you came from, but you had a place that you came, that everybody else came to the same place and had the same set of interests, the same set of perspectives about what it is that they're trying to get done. It's important to me that we teach ourselves that of all the things we got to do, we got to be a country first.
Right.
And you can't be a country, everybody's running off like cats, you know, in different directions.
Right.
You got to agree that we're a country. If we agree that we're a country, then we have to agree that there are things that we need to do for each other as a country.
Right.
We have Social Security. We have clean water.
Right.
We have a way to test our food. I mean, all these things that we
And
do.
maybe that's why we have the division, because there's so many people with different perspectives.
Because people are actually being raised to think of themselves in their differences,
right.
rather than being raised to think of themselves in terms of the similarities, those things that make us and us, right? But it's hard for you to fight a battle if everybody's is a different thing and they're all going for their own individual directions. It's easier to fight a battle if we all see ourselves as one, fighting the same battle for the same reasons against the same enemy. That's what we really need to get our minds wrapped around. So that's what I got out of this article. Hopefully that made sense, you know, to our folks in our audience. We want to get on another subject on the other side of this break. I want to talk a little bit about the hearing that was held, the last hearing on the January 6th insurrection, and a little bit about this Mar-a-Lago stuff and this hiding of documents that's been done by the former, now they call him the former president. We used to call people president, even if you're no longer the president, but you kept the title, right? Now they refer to him as the former president. So, but we'll talk about that. So listen, if we're making some kind of sense to you, we look forward to talking to you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM, WBNY.
What if one day you went to your secret hiding place? Instead of what you came for, you found a phone number, 1-800-662-HELP. What would you do? Would you stop and give it some thought? Before drugs take their toll on you and your family, know that there is help. You can quit. For help with drug use, call 1-800-662-HELP for free and confidential information and treatment referral, or go to samhsa.gov/knowtherisks.
To join Mr. Hare on today's Living for the People, dial 878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. Or go to facebook.com/91.3 WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY. Courtesy CNN.
And the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. So listen, we were talking a bit about readiness, and it's not something that you normally think about this kind of a show, talking about that. But as things move along in this world, you know, as I see what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, it's really clear to me that regardless of how I feel about the decisions that we have made through our elected leaders that push us in whatever directions we've been moving in, at the end of the day, we're still going to have to be Americans. We don't just want to be Americans, we have to be Americans, right? Because if we don't operate collectively in our own self-interest, other people are operating collectively in their self-interest, and their unity could trump our disunity. We have to be united as a community of people. So listen, I want to talk a little bit in this section about the this issue with the classified documents and non-classified documents that have been held by Donald Trump ever since he left the White House. Now, you have a call?
No, I got a comment though.
Oh, sure.
I got a comment before you go into there. It says, Eric Prince. I'm on you.
That's who it was.
Eric Prince, Betsy. Oh, that's what you was talking
DeVos. I was trying to think
right.
of. Right.
Eric Prince, Betsy DeVos's brother, founded Blackwater. The U.S. could then outsource torture and claim that we don't torture any combatants.
That's correct. That's correct.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, think about that. Think about who we think we are. I'm going to put it that way.
Right.
Who do we think we are? And then what do we actually do?
Mr. Big Stuff.
So, right. So we're Mr. Big Stuff. You know, we're Captain Democracy. You know, we believe that all men are created equal, endowed with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. all the stuff, right?
Right.
We say those things. But then people put us in a position where we have power over other people, and suddenly we're not that person anymore. Now we're raping people, you know, we're extorting people, you know, we're abusing people, you know, and so on.
Right.
All under the under the table, and then we get called on it. We lie about it.
Wow.
Right. I mean, I remember that you might not be old enough to remember this, but the My Lai massacre that took place in Vietnam, they killed something like 23, 25 people, you know, in a massacre in Vietnam, just because they could.
Wow.
A sergeant, you know, I won't give his name because I don't want to keep prejudicing this particular person, but a sergeant had control of his regiment, and they didn't find what they wanted to find or thought they were going to find in this village. So they decided they were going to wipe the village out, and they just killed all these people, right? Who would think that the United States, people that are citizens of the United States, would just deliberately massacre 2 or 3 dozen people?
Right.
Just do that.
Just because you got the power.
See, because we think of ourselves as being something better than what we actually are.
Right.
What we do is we end up justifying the fact that we're not as good as we think we are, and we justify it that way and continue to do wrong things. We even elect people to become president of the United States who are born again liars.
Yeah.
Who are, you know, usually born again liars are also born again thieves. That, you know, those birds of the feather, they run together, right? How do we know that they're thieves? Well, because when they leave the White House, they take the dishes, they take the rugs, they take the White House papers.
Anything they think of that has value that they can use.
Take the White House papers to their home in Mar-a-Lago. Why? We still haven't been told by Donald Trump why he felt that these things were his. But we do know that he did think that those papers were his, because they have him on record with witnesses who he spoke in front of, where he said that these are my papers.
Right.
Even though there's the Presidential Records Act, which says that those things are the property of the United States.
I got a feeling Trump didn't even know that
No, he doesn't get to not remember, because when you are ending your term as a president, people from the National Archives and Records Administration come to you
and tell them
you leave, or you lost in November 3rd of 2020. November 4th or 5th of 2020, somebody came and knocked on your door and said, "Hello, are you Donald Trump?" Guess what? All those papers you got here, they belong to us. So you need to start getting that stuff organized and get it transferred over to, to the National Records and Archives Administration.
So it wasn't that he didn't know.
It didn't matter whether he didn't know or knew or didn't know. The National Archives and Records Administration knew, and they have a process. They've been doing this for 245 years. They know how to do it. Right. So Donald Trump doesn't get to plead ignorance, on this. When they told him that this stuff has to go, he sat on it. And this is going to sound stupid. I don't mean it to sound that way, but he had it in his head that there was a possibility, some remote possibility, that even after he lost the election, he could still retain power. And if he retained power, why would I move all my stuff and then have to move it all back into the White House again?
That's his mindset.
Right?
Correct.
I mean, I know that seems like a stupid reasoning and whatnot, but I think that's where he was coming from, right? Donald Trump has a lot of the behavior of kids that I grew up with, who were sort of punkish, kind of kids. They didn't respect other people, didn't have any care about, the neighborhood, and they just were very self-oriented.
I do what I want to do.
Right,
and I own what I want to own.
Right, and didn't even think of themselves as being bad people.
Right.
But they were just so self-centered, that they did bad things constantly. They were rude, and coarse and so on, right? Donald Trump has a lot of that kind of behavior. Yes. At least that's how I perceive it.
That's his nature.
Right.
That's his nature.
Right. And so in this case, when you lie to the FBI, when you lie to the Department of Justice, when you lie to a joint session of Congress or to a House, or Senate oversight committee, those are serious crimes, even if the lie you told was nonsense.
Right.
That you knew it was a lie when it was being said. It's still a criminal act for you to lie to those people. Donald Trump has been doing this over and over and over again. Right. Now, he was asked to give back these papers within a few months after he left office in January of 2021. He was asked to give these papers. He was told these papers were in his possession. He did admit that these papers were in his possession, and he was asked to give the papers back. He kept resisting giving the papers back for over almost a year. Finally, in, I believe, January of 2022, this year, finally, he gave up something like 15 boxes worth of these papers. But when they went to the National Archives and they started sorting these things and putting them into whatever kind of filing system that they use at the National Archives and Records Administration, it turned out that there were pieces of paper there were documents that were missing, that the documents had to be there because they were a part of a chain of documents that all went together. And they had other records that indicated that these documents existed. As a consequence, they go back to Donald Trump and they say, "You haven't given us the documentation that you said you were going to provide." They went back and forth from January until May, and finally, sometime in early May, I guess, they had somebody. I forget the woman's name. I think it was Babs. I don't want to say her name wrong. Christine Babs, I think her name was, signed a document saying that she had supervised the going through all of the papers that Donald Trump had, and they had something like, less than 40 file folders of documents that were still considered to be classified that they were giving back to the National Archives. But it turns out that those weren't enough for what the National Archives knew was missing. They went back at Donald Trump again, several more times, and eventually had to go to the courts, a federal court, and get an order to allow a search of Donald Trump's property at Mar-a-Lago in order to find where the rest of those documents were. They did that. They got another bunch, 11 boxes worth of documents, and it turns out that even that was not enough. There were still more documents that were missing, and so the documents that remained at Mar-a-Lago, Trump told his people. Trump himself, according to this article, and I just want to give you the article, so if you want to go and look it up yourself, this article was written by Devlin Barrett and Josh Dawsey, and it's entitled "Trump Worker Told FBI About Moving Mar-a-Lago Boxes on Ex-President's Orders." This was published in the Washington Post on October 12th. And this employee has told federal agents about moving boxes of documents at the specific direction offers key evidence of Donald Trump's behavior as investigators sought the return of classified material. Now, keep in mind, independent of the January 6th insurrection investigation, this investigation of the keeping of federal documents, well, actually, it's really stealing federal documents. That is a separate investigation, and the documentation of that, they have witnesses who work for Donald Trump who helped move the boxes from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. They have those persons' testimony, and they have video testimony or video evidence of Donald Trump's people moving these boxes, and in some cases where Donald Trump is in the video, moving these boxes into Donald Trump's residence. I forget, Taylor Budowich, he accused the Justice Department of leaking misleading and false information to partisan allies that he referred to, as Donald refers to them, as fake news, and said nothing is more dangerous than political interference and unequal justice. Simply put, it's un-American for people to be accusing Donald Trump of doing what Donald Trump clearly was doing.
Right.
The employee who was working at Mar-a-Lago was cooperating with the Justice Department. In their first interview, the witness denied handling sensitive documents, but as they gathered more video evidence that proved that not only were the documents moved, you, the witness, were involved in it because you're in the video moving the documents.
Wow.
So if you're going to say that you didn't know anything about it, then we'll have to we'll have to approach this in a different legalistic way. So that witness all of a sudden turned into somebody who had eyes and ears and memory and so on. And so the witness is now considered to be a key part of the Mar-a-Lago investigation, offering details about the former president's alleged actions and instructions to subordinates that could have been an attempt to thwart federal officials' demands for the return of classified and government documents. Now, I want to put a little post note on that because I heard something on Democracy Now! Before the program started that you need to also pay attention to in our audience. And that was the assertion by Steve Scalise, who's a congressperson or a senator, I think it's senator, who asserted that Nancy Pelosi, this is statements that were made in the week after the January 6th insurrection, and repeated over and over and over again, that Nancy Pelosi delayed getting the Metropolitan Police Force and the Capitol Police and the National Guard involved in getting over to the Capitol building and defending the Capitol building from the assault that was underway with the people, the supporters of Donald Trump. Now, Scalise said that, but it turns out we actually saw, and I heard this myself last night, that Scalise was physically in the room, standing within earshot of Nancy Pelosi when she's on the phone calling the mayor of the city of Washington, D.C., asking the mayor, telling the mayor that these people were breaking into the building, breaking windows, knocking down doors. You need to get here right away. The mayor probably sounded like she said something like, well, it's going to take us X amount of time to get our people organized to get over there.
Right.
And Nancy Pelosi's response was, we don't have time for that. Send whoever you have.
Right.
If you only got 9 people, send
Send
whoever you
somebody.
have.
Right. Do
But
something.
this is going down right now.
Right.
You need to come right now. Apparently, the mayor agreed, and then Nancy Pelosi's response was, "Thank you so much, Mayor. I think she said, I don't want to misstate what she said, but something to the effect of, I'll need to continue to communicate with you, as the day goes on."
Right.
Right. So she was on top of it. Then she
Right.
calls, the National Guard. She calls the Metropolitan, Police. She's doing all of the things that you would think the president of the United States would do.
Right.
Because not only is it his responsibility, all of those people are in a chain of command that leads to the president of the United States.
Right.
He's ultimately the boss of all of the people that she's calling.
Right.
So she's calling his troops.
Right.
She's calling his homeboys and asking them to respond to an attack on the Senate and the legislature.
Right.
She's doing that for him. Those people don't work for her. They work for him.
Right.
But she had to call them to get them
Right.
in motion, and it still took them like 3 hours to get
Right.
to
Now,
get
share
there.
with the people the insight that she had probably before and after about her daughter.
Oh gosh, I didn't even speak about that. It turns out that Nancy Pelosi's daughter was physically at the grounds of the Capitol building,
The resurrection.
as probably just doing stuff that kids do. She's recording what's going on at this demonstration, at the
Right.
Capitol building, and it turns into being this crazy situation, where
Historic day.
right, exactly. And so she's in the middle of that. But keep in mind now, when these people start throwing bottles and brandishing weapons, and using flags as
Right.
spears and so on, she's now in the middle of all of this stuff, right?
Right.
And so Nancy Pelosi's got to be pretty antsy about this
Right.
thing,
That's
right?
why she probably got on the telephone
Exactly.
contacting all these people also.
Exactly, right? I mean, she didn't say that in the video clip that I saw, but you got to know that it had to be pressing on her mind.
Well, not only that, afterwards, she was the force that was saying, no, we got to do something and we got to arrest these people. We got to
Right.
get down to the bottom of this
Right,
because she had an
there
insight.
has to be accountability for this
yes,
thing, right?
Right.
And accountability, because just like other people's daughters could have been caught up in this thing,
Right.
her daughter was caught up,
Right.
in this thing, right?
Right.
And so that has a lot to do.
See, I
with
didn't know that. I'm glad you shared that with me. That helps me to see Pelosi on a different
in
level.
a different light.
Because
right.
I did see her as a force. Wow, she's forceful on this thing. But now I understand why.
And it says something to me about Steve Scalise, that he would claim that Nancy Pelosi had sat on motivating people to respond to this insurrection, when in fact she had done the absolute opposite. But not
Right.
only had she done the absolute opposite, Steve Scalise knew that she had done the absolute opposite, because he was in the same room
Wow.
she was in, being protected by the same people that were protecting Nancy Pelosi,
Wow.
from these bizarre people that were attacking
Now,
the.
he's Republican?
He's a Republican.
Okay,
right?
I figured that. All right.
But I mean, it's okay to be Republicans, but it's not okay for you to lie.
Well, to me, it seems like Republicans, whether it's right or wrong, they're going to do whatever their constituents or whatever their philosophy. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, as long as we get our desired result.
And the shame is they'll treat this as freedom of speech.
Right.
When if you did that, you'd be held accountable for lying.
We all know that. And I hate to bring this up, viewers, but if that was a bunch of black people on, there would have been a lot of shots before they even entered the building.
In fact, they would have shot them all first, and then
That's what I mean.
would have walked over
And
their
then ask
bodies.
questions,
Yeah,
yeah.
walked over their bodies. Wouldn't
Right.
ask any questions.
Right.
Other than, where do you want me to bury these people?
Right.
They just open up a great big pit and just toss them all, in there. I mean,
Right.
that's the record of this country.
Right.
So the Post revealed two key parts of the criminal probe that's underway. An account from a witness who worked for and took directions from Trump, and the way that security footage from Mar-a-Lago has played an important role in proving the witness's accounts. Together, these pieces of evidence help convince the FBI and Justice Department to seek that court-authorized search that led to the things we're talking about right now. It resulted in the seizure of 103 documents that were marked classified that had not been turned over to the government in response to the subpoena that was issued in May. A subpoena is issued in May. The Justice Department or the Justice Department actually gets the search warrant and goes to do the search of the Mar-a-Lago property on August 8th. So it goes from May, when the subpoena was issued, to August 8th. And even then, Trump had not responded, had not complied with the subpoena. They had to go in with U.S. Marshals, and literally search the property, under guard,
Right.
in order to get this. I mean, that should not have been. Right? I mean, you're the president of the United States. You're supposed to be the chief administrator of the laws of the country. How is it that you are subject to a subpoena and you don't obey a subpoena issued by you?
Right.
I mean, well, that's another part of the story. The August 8th search is the one that yielded about 11,000 documents that were not marked classified. The failure or possible refusal to return these classified documents is at the heart of the Justice Department's investigation. So the status of key investigations involving Trump, I hope I'm saying this right, within the Justice Department and the FBI, the witness account has been a closely held secret as agents continue to gather evidence in this high stakes investigation. In a filing to the Supreme Court on this past Tuesday, the Justice Department lawyers appeared to allude to witness accounts that the video footage or about this video footage when they wrote, quoting now the Justice Department, the FBI uncovered evidence that the response to the grand jury subpoena was incomplete, that additional classified documents likely remained at Mar-a-Lago, and that efforts had likely been taken to obstruct the investigation. That effort shows on video that where the documents were on video shown to be put into a storage room, some storage area at Mar-a-Lago, it then shows after the May subpoena, was issued, it shows Donald Trump and his workers taking some of the boxes out of the storeroom.
It shows Donald Trump actually physically.
He's physically in the video.
Oh, I thought
right?
he had other people do that.
They were doing the work, but he was there
directing,
right, giving direction, right? And so some of these boxes, which I presume he knew which boxes they were and what they contained, that they were removed from that storage area and taken someplace else. Some of those documents wound up being in his physical office at Mar-a-Lago, right? And I think you saw the image where they had spread out some of the documents on the floor, so you could see how many had markings of being classified in those documents. So that then becomes obstruction of governmental administration.
Right.
The government is requesting something that the government has a right to request.
Right.
That the government has every expectation to know that you have the documents.
Right.
Ask you to give the documents back, and you hide the documents. That's obstruction of governmental administration, and that's a crime.
Right. We got some Facebook viewers talking about, I guess, Nancy Pelosi. Like her or hate her, Pelosi knows how the mechanism of government works in an emergency. Trump, on the other hand, knows how to incite riots by lying to his followers. Think about that before voting next month. Wow.
And I think I appreciate the caller, because that's got to be in your spirit. See, building on what the caller just said, here's the other side or the expansion of that.
Right.
The expansion of that is that what the Trump people, and particularly the Republican administration across the country, has done, the administrators across the country have done, is they have licensed people who are opposed to the idea that Trump is not the president of the United States right now. They believe that the election in 2020 was a fraudulent election, and the proof that it was a fraudulent election is that Joe Biden won. That's their proof.
Right. And they believe he's still president too.
And so as a consequence of that, they've run candidates for Secretary of State, for county offices where they control who are the chairs of the boards of election, across the state.
Right.
They control what the election laws are. They're changing election laws
Right.
to fit their schema, so that they can say that what they do is not particularly biased, against a particular community of people.
Uh-huh.
Because usually when you do these kinds of things, you don't say this is to prevent you Puerto Rican people from being able to vote. This is to prevent you African people from being able. That's not what they do.
Right.
What they do is they change procedures in a way that make it harder for people that live in particular communities for those people to be able to participate, right? So we talked about this in Louisiana when they once had something like 720 or so polling places in Louisiana, and they shrunk them down to like less than 30 polling places across the state. Now, who gets hurt by that? The people that live the farthest distance, who have the least amount of reliable transportation, are the ones who are going to be compromised in terms of their ability to be able to participate in that election. So you can use procedures in a way that bias elections toward one group and against another group,
Right.
without naming the people that you were trying to help and the people that you were trying to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So the important thing I'm trying to help us to understand is you have these people who don't believe in democracy. They actually have passed rules in Georgia, in Arizona. I believe this rule has been passed in Wisconsin. It's either done or about to be done in Pennsylvania, where if you don't like the way an election went, you could actually have the election decertified, have the
Right.
votes decertified,
Right.
and then have the governor of the state convene the legislature and have the legislature vote just by itself.
Well, they already asked him with the district, with them realigning the
Well,
district.
that's a different aspect, but the gerrymandering of districts has already been done.
Right, that's what.
Right, where they wiped out a district that should
Right.
have been in Alabama, an African majority district in Alabama. They wiped it out by putting 80% of all of
Right.
the African Americans in Alabama into one district.
Which lets you know they'll do anything to stop your vote and to
And
increase
it lets you
theirs.
know that the Supreme Court is not supreme for everybody. It's just supreme for the
That's
Republicans,
good.
right?
Supreme for
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
OUS.
they're not like the real Supremes. They're like the Supremes that. Never mind. That's,
Supremes.
let me leave Diana Ross
I
alone.
need
Okay.
love. Okay.
I knew you were going to go there, right?
Stop.
All right. So it's important for us to understand that all of those people that align themselves with the anti-democracy people who feel like it's okay for them to use their control over processes and procedures to be able to marginalize people's ability to be able to vote or vote in a representative way in their districts. You need to defeat those people at the polls, regardless of what they say about inflation or what they say about COVID-19 or what they say about, affordable housing, whatever the other issues that they talk about,